Hello everyone, my name is Nimish Kapoor and you're watching UPSCprep.com. And today's video is very important because what we are going to discuss is the modern Indian history entire timeline's active recall. Within a matter of 1.5 hours, actually you can from the advent of Europeans to the Indian independence, you can actually revise the entire modern Indian history. So, without wasting any time, let's begin with the active recall. Okay, so now we are starting with the advent of Europeans. Advent of Europeans. And you know who's the first Europeans to be there in India? Of course, they are Portuguese. Portuguese. So, Portuguese came to India in 1498. So, 1498 Portuguese with whom arrival of Vasco da Gama around Cape of Good Hope. So, this is the new route which bypasses the existing routes to India. Okay, Cape of Good Hope around the African continent. 1500, the first factory Portuguese established at Calicut, Monde Coricor. So that is where they established. 1510, Alfonso de Albuquerque captured Goa, and eventually this Goa became capital. And this period of 1500 to 1600 is where in Europeans only one power you will see, not as a major political power, but at least in the areas in Deccan and the coastline, particularly the Malabar, you'll see their influence was very strong. So now 1600, English East India Company is established. This company later on, 150 years later, becomes a major political power. But from 1600, eventually gradually setting till 1757, we see it as a major trading power. Major trading power. That's it. No political power. So 1602, what happens? Establishment of Dutch East India Company happens. Another power. So we had Portuguese, we had English, and now VOC. So Dutch East India Company often is referred to as VOC. Dutch East India Company is established in 1602, which later on became again a very important power, particularly again Malabar, the Coromandel Coast, and it also in Ceylon and in Southeast Asia. So Dutch East India Company. Now, the first factory of Dutch was established at Masulipatam, modern you can also say Machilipatnam. Okay. Then Captain Hawkins, this is on behalf of East India Company, arrives in India. First proper factory. See, their outposts, their trading posts were established earlier, English East India Company, but their first proper factory was established in Surat, the English East India Company. Thomas Roe, who was official ambassador to Jahangir Court, sent by the English monarch, was sent, and the same year he met Jahangir, and Jahangir issued a farman that yes, you can establish factories. And this meet was pretty important, often depicted in the pictures. So thereafter, Francis Day found the city of Madras, and what fort name? Fort Saint George was established here. Now, very interestingly, Bombay was given now to King Charles II of England by Portuguese. Why? As a dowry, because King Charles II married a Portuguese princess, and in dowry came Bombay. And this Bombay was handed over to later on, few years later, to English East India Company on an annual rent of very nominal, uh, pay. So now another power. So now we've understood another power. French East India Company is also established in 1664, also trying to gain hand in a very lucrative trade with India. India at that time was one of the dominating figures in global trade in terms of the kind of, be it spices to cloth to other things, India was very lucrative. And to break the hegemony of other older powers and the newer powers which were coming up, French also formed the East India Company. 1668, French established their factory at Surat. So do not think of a factory like a modern day factory. These are majorly trading areas. So idea was not to produce something, but as bringing things from the interland to the particular port, then keeping it in kind of a warehouse, and then shipping it. So British East India Company attacked Hooghly in 1686. This led to fight with Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb, told English to leave. Eventually, there was a compromise. Okay. 1707 was the death of Aurangzeb. And what it led to? It led to uh, the weakening of Mughals. Weakening of Mughals. And thereafter, you see, with every Mughal, the power kept on reducing, the area of influence kept on reducing, and especially under Muhammad Shah, Rangila, did you see that the influence significantly reduced? Also, there are a couple of more reasons which I'll talk in the timeline. 1713, the Peshwaship was established where Peshwa became all powerful. Balaji Vishwanath became the first Peshwa, and he gradually, uh, took over the power in terms of bringing the Maratha together and spearheading its campaign and its expansion. 1717 is what you see a golden farman. Farooq Siyar, who is the Mughal monarch, he issues a farman to English East India Company, which often is said as the Magna Carta of the English East India Company in India, where duty-free trade, the issuing of dastaks, duty-free trade at an annual charge was done, which significantly boosted the English uh, as a trading power as compared to others. And it made Bengal as the hub of trade also. 1717 also is the period when Murshid Quli Khan actually became the governor of Bengal, but he designated his post as Nawab, basically trying to say that I am more independent in running my affairs, even though I have we'll send peshkash or tributes or some sort of revenue to Mughals, but then I'll run independently. Bajirao became Peshwa in 1720. He is also known as the Fighting Peshwa. Fighting Peshwa. So Nizamul Mulk in 1722 became Wazir of Mughal Empire, and this is a very important phase. Uh, and the Nizamul Mulk became the Wazir, but then 2 years later, he realized that there is so much court politics going on, and it is better that I am independent. So he goes to the Deccan and founds the state of Hyderabad in 1724. At the same time, Awadh, again one of the province of Mughals, is where Sadat Khan establishes himself as Nawab. Okay. 1729, King Martand Verma of Travancore. So I'll say rather ruler of Kerala, we should say ruler of Travancore. And one of the biggest impact which happened on Mughals, which weakened them significantly, was Nadir Shah, the Persian emperor, invaded India. And I say India, I mean particularly he plundered Delhi, plundered Delhi, and he took away the peacock throne. Along with that, the Kohinoor from the Mughals. Plundered Delhi like anything. And 1739, Maratha defeated Portuguese and captured Vasai and Salsette. Okay. So Maratha defeated Portuguese here, 1739. And even though Nadir Shah went, okay, now Afghan Ahmad Shah Abdali or Ahmad Shah Durrani, his period of plundering started. He invaded 1748 to 61 is when he came multiple times and invaded India, particularly Delhi and Punjab. So it further drained, be it Mughals or Punjab region of its wealth. 1748 Treaty of Al-La-Chapelle ends the first Anglo-Carnatic War. Now, what is this war? Whom it is being fought with? Anglo-Carnatic War is between English and French, particularly being fought in the southern India. Treaty of Aula-Chapelle brings this to an end, the first Anglo-Carnatic War. The Treaty of Pondicherry, 1754, Treaty of Pondicherry brings end to the second Anglo-Carnatic War. Okay. 1756, Sirajud-Dowlah became the Nawab of Bengal in 1756. From Ali Vardi Khan, his grandson, Sirajud-Dowlah. He's very immature. He does not understand how to deal with English at this point. And what happens thereafter is the Treaty of Ali Nagar. Now, Sirajud-Dowlah sees that English East India Company is fortifying what? The fortifying Calcutta. So he said, no, without my permission, you cannot fortify Calcutta. He goes and defeats the English. An unfortunate incident of black hole incident also happens where the prisoners kept in a room with just one window suffocates to death. Now, Ali Nagar, you might be thinking, which is this place? Actually, Sirajud-Dowlah calls Calcutta as Ali Nagar. So this is nothing but Calcutta. So Treaty of Ali Nagar is where English agrees that we will not fortify Calcutta. But then they realize that Sirajud-Dowlah, under him, we won't be able to prosper. So they tried to form an alliance to eliminate him. So the commander-in-chief of Sirajud-Dowlah's Nawab's army is Mir Jafar. Plus he also ties up with the bankers Jagat Seths. And the Battle of Plassey happens, and eventually through this politics and through some fortune, British defeats Sirajud-Dowlah. But they do not take the political power outrightly. But what they do is they install Mir Jafar as a Nawab. But then they drain him of the wealth of Bengal, like anything. Specifically, the period of, from 1757 onwards, Robert Clive, being the governor, extracts a lot of personal tributes as well as plunders the whatever revenue basically was generated by Bengal at a huge level. It was being plundered. So 1759, now Mir Jafar realizes that this way I am having literally no power, plus I'm being drained of the wealth. It is better that, so he joins the forces, discusses with Dutch and English, defeats Dutch firstly at Bedar, known as Battle of Bedar or Battle of Hooghly also. And same time, British also defeated Mir Jafar in Battle of Chinsura. And then who replaces Mir Jafar? Mir Qasim, his son-in-law. Son-in-law replaces Mir Qasim replaces Mir Jafar as Nawab of Bengal. Idea of English East India Company was that there won't be any resistance now. Mir Qasim would certainly obey whatever English would tell him to. But then he also later on understands that to gain his influence and overall autonomy, he needs to go away. So what he does is changes the capital from Murshidabad to in Bihar. He shifts to right. He shifts to Bihar and do read, which is the capital, which he shifts to. So that is one thing you need to look at. Okay. 1761, Marathas defeated. Very important here. Marathas defeated in the third battle of Panipat. So just a hint for praise, the capital shifts from M to M. Murshidabad to, think over it. 5 seconds. Munger. Okay. Now Marathas are defeated by Ahmad Shah Abdali in the third battle of Panipat. Marathas at this time is a so at this time is also a period of rise of regional states. And Marathas, they are one of the biggest regional power here at this time. They have all India ambition but are defeated in the third battle of Panipat by Ahmad Shah Abdali and his alliance which he creates. So at this time also Chikka Krishna Raja Wodeyar II of Mysore, who was the ruler of Mysore, was overthrown by the commander-in-chief of the army of Mysore, Hyder Ali. Now, Hyder Ali started as a Punjabi person traveling to Deccan for employment opportunity and becomes a soldier, rises up the ranks, and eventually later on overthrows, basically taking control under him of the state, Hyder Ali. And we'll talk about him, how he eventually, leads Mysore in modernization and thereafter starts series of four Anglo-Mysore wars, two of which he fought himself. Okay, so 1763 to 1800, we also see the tribal as well as the civil uprisings, and particularly in this period before 1900. Sannyasi rebellion being very, very important. Battle of Buxar is the basically turning point where English start gaining political control. First time a foreign power takes a political control. The Battle of Buxar is fought between Mir Qasim, that is the army of Bengal, along with he creates a tripartite alliance along with Shuja-ud-Dawla of Awadh and Shah Alam II of Mughals. Shah Alam II is basically does not have any power at this time because he himself is away from his kingdom. His wazir has, is after his life, but he somehow is just he's living life as a pauper. Means literally very few people are there who's supporting. But then, as an emperor, the name is there. So the tripartite alliance happens, but at Buxar, this alliance loses from the English East India Company. Treaty of Allahabad is signed between both Shuja-ud-Dawla as well as Shah Alam II. Shah Alam II, through this, gives Diwani rights. Diwani rights to the English East India Company. That is revenue collection rights. They have the right to collect revenue now. Even though there is a Nawab, but right to collect revenue of the state is with English. On the other hand, Shuja-ud-Dawla also signs where he gives up some of his territory, but basically the defense of the Awadh now comes with English. 1765, Robert Clive introduced the dual system government in Bengal, and this is very interesting, this dual system. So there will be one is Diwani, which is with English, and then one is Nizamat, which is civil administration, primarily with the Nawab Subadar. So here English have all the power but no responsibility. Why power? Because they are collecting revenue, they have the revenue, but they have no responsibility. That is, civil administration is not under them. On the other hand, Nawab has all the responsibility but no power. because no revenue. So this system persists till 1772-73. Okay. Only after regulating act things changes. I'll talk about it. So as I said, Hyder Ali the first Anglo-Mysore War happens in 1767 to 1769. There are multiple reasons for it. That uh, there is a growing power like Mysore, and Hyder Ali is asserting his influence in the area. So Hyderabad Marathas and English thinks they'll attack, but then Marathas and Hyderabad then withdraws or take the side of Mysore in this first war. So this basically, the Mysore army reached at the gates of Madras. Eventually, there was a Treaty of Madras which ended First Anglo-Mysore War. All the territories which were occupied by either parties were given back. One very, very important thing happened. Very important here. What is that? One very important thing which happened is that under this Treaty of Madras, it was agreed that in future, if any third party attacks the other, then, for example, let's say if Marathas attack Mysore, then English have to come and protect Mysore or fight with it against Marathas, and vice versa. So this was agreed to. Okay. Regulating Act of 1773 is very, very important. Now, Governor of Bengal. So Nawabship was abolished in 66-67. So now this dual government ended, and a governor of Bengal now became Governor General of Bengal, having all the power with him, along with his executive council. So Warren Hastings became the first Governor General of Bengal. He remained at this post till 1785. So he became the first Governor General. Also, there was a Supreme Court established in Calcutta. Okay. But the powers of Supreme Court were not defined. 1775 also leads to the start of very, very important is the turning point. Another turning point in history I often talk about is the first Anglo-Maratha War. With start of this war, basically over the period of time, the power of Maratha started declining. So a treaty of Surat was signed between Raghunath Rao and the British. Which British? The Bombay Council, the Bombay Presidency Council. That he would be installed as he would be installed as the Peshwa, but the Peshwa in Pune didn't agree to it. It led to starting of the war, and it went until 1782 through Treaty of Salbai ending it. Okay. But it significantly reduced over the period of time the power of Marathas. Second Anglo-Mysore War started with the reason, if you remember, Treaty of Madras. There was an attack on Mysore, but English didn't come. English didn't come to protect Mysore as agreed in Treaty of Madras, which resulted in Second Anglo-Mysore War. Now this time, English along with Marathas and Hyderabad attacked Mysore. And this war ended with the Treaty of Mangalore. And this Treaty of Mangalore is very important because this is the last time when a European power like English and Mysore, they both signed it as an equal powers. Okay. Now, if you remember, 1773 Regulating Act had a Supreme Court was established, but the powers were not defined. And as per this act. So which led to, Supreme Court asserting its power at a lot of places. So an amending act of 1781 had to be brought in 1781 to limit the powers of this Supreme Court. Okay. 1782, Tipu Sultan became the ruler of Mysore after death of his father Hyder Ali. And this one very important 1781 war, which often, usually is not talked about in history, but must be, is the Battle of Pollilur. Battle of Pollilur, which actually was won by the Mysore against English. So Tipu Sultan carried on the war, Second Anglo-Mysore War, and this ended with Treaty of Mangalore, which I talked about. Okay. And as I already talked about earlier, Treaty of Salbai ended First Anglo-Maratha War as well. Now, second important constitutional development under British, which happened after the Regulating Act of 1773, was the Pitt's India Act. And what it does is it creates dual system of government again, creating a board of control, which is a political body which has all the political functions, has all the political, it means look after civil military affairs in India. Now it constitutes the chancellor, it constitutes secretary of state and the members of privy council. Okay, and there's another called court of directors. Basically these court of directors, the court of directors of the company, English East India Company, having the commercial functions with them. So 1786, another amending act. Now this amending act is very important here. So Warren Hastings was called back from India, and replacement from him was decided that okay, we'll send Lord Chelmsford. Sorry, not Lord Chelmsford. Cornwallis. Sorry, I confused the name. Cornwallis. Lord Cornwallis. Okay. Now Lord Cornwallis was a military veteran. He fought in the American War of Independence, American War. He fought. He said that, okay, I'll go as a Governor General of Bengal, but I want two things for me. One, I'm a military person. I cannot have a separate commander in chief under me. So I should be made commander in chief. Okay. Second, he said that I have a executive council and they have, I do not have a veto power. I do not have a say if, in majority they decide against me, I cannot do anything. I need to have that overriding pass. That means a veto in special conditions. So what happened? Under this act, this was given. So this act actually was brought in to just agree to what Cornwallis demanded, and he was made the Governor General of Bengal from 1786 to 1793. Okay. Now, Third Anglo-Mysore War also started, 1789 to 1792. And it does not end well for Mysore. So there is a Treaty of Seringapatam. And you also can say the Treaty of Srirangapatnam or Seringapatam, which was the capital of Mysore state under Tipu Sultan. And what happens is that war indemnity is charged. His sons are taken away by Cornwallis. So does not end well for Tipu Sultan. 1793, first in the series of four charter acts are brought by English. So a royal charter, particularly with respect to trade, it gives the exclusive right of trade to English East India Company with India. It extends it for 20 years. Okay. Charter Act 1793. 1793 also Lord Cornwallis. So John Shore, no, it implemented it, but permanent settlement was brought by Lord Cornwallis. Implemented by John Shore. 1793 is after Cornwallis goes back. John Shore becomes the Governor General of Bengal. But John Shore is not an expansionist in mindset. He says, I don't want to intervene in the affairs. So be it Mysore, I don't want to intervene. What is happening with Marathas, I don't want to intervene. What's happening with Hyderabad, I don't want to intervene. So he basically says, Jaise the, the way things are, let it be the way it is. I don't want to intervene anywhere. So he believes in the policy of non-intervention. 1798 to 1805 is transition again. Suddenly a person is brought into the power who now is with the expansionist mindset. Lord Wellesley. He becomes the Governor General of Bengal. And the major policy which is implements is the subsidiary alliance policy. Now, this subsidiary alliance policy basically expands the political influence of English East India Company. Step by step from 1798 to 99, 1800, 1, 2, 3, many states agree to subsidiary alliance. What is this subsidiary alliance? That the state, their foreign affairs and their defense will be taken care by English. They have to disband their army. Their upkeep needs to be taken care by the revenues of that state only. Plus, a resident will be appointed who will be also important part of the court. So basically, the sovereignty of these regional states were taken away through the subsidiary line system. Okay. And many people get confused between Lord Wellesley and Arthur Wellesley. Do not get confused. Arthur Wellesley is his brother, who later on becomes the commander in chief under him, and Lord Wellesley is the Governor General of Bengal. Okay. Fourth Anglo-Mysore War happens and it ends with the death of Tipu Sultan, and eventually Mysore state, you know, uh, Tipu Sultan was defeated, killed, and Krishna Raja III signed subsidiary alliance treaty with Wellesley in 1799. 1801, various Sikh confederacies come together in 1799, primarily under the leadership of Ranjit Singh of Suker Chakia Misl, and establishes Sikh state. 1802, Amritsar is also one. 1799, Lahore is one. And he establishes Sikh state. Shah Alam II. Remember this? Shah Alam II. In 1764, he fought the Battle of Buxar in a tripartite alliance. Now he has accepted the British protection. He's now blind. Very unfortunate. If you want to read about him, there's a beautiful book of Naki. Read about Shah Alam II. Second Anglo-Maratha War, 1803 to 05. Okay. Second Anglo-Maratha War. Now this further diminishes the power of Marathas. The confederacies, cannot fight united, and hence thereafter are basically separated. So Second Anglo-Maratha War happens. Lord Minto I becomes the Governor General of, sorry, not India. Sorry, right. So here it's not India, it's Bengal. Remember this. So it's mistakenly written here. Bengal. So 1773 to 1833 is a period when we had Governor General of Bengal. 1833 to 1858 is when you have Governor General of India. And then 1858 to basically 1947, you can say, I'll talk about that separately. You had Governor General of India come Viceroy. Okay. 1809, a Treaty of Amritsar is signed with Maharaja Ranjit Singh and English East India Company, particularly deciding the boundary between the both, which is decided as Satluj. Okay. 1813 Charter Act, a very, very important act because this ends the trade monopoly. Of English East India Company, except in trade in tea and trade with China. Plus education also, 1 lakh rupees separately given. 1813 to 1823, Lord Hastings becomes the Governor General of Bengal. Again, do not get confused between Warren Hastings and Lord Hastings. Are separate. For 10 years, he was the Governor General of Bengal. 1814 to 1816, Anglo-Nepal War happens, which ends with the Treaty of Sagoli in 1816. Till now, this treaty is often referenced in news with respect to the border issue between two states. Atmiya Sabha, a socio-religious reform organization, Atmiya Sabha was established by Raja Ram Mohan Roy in 1815, which discontinued in 1824, but its new form came up in 1828. I'll talk about that, which was Brahmo Samaj. Third Anglo-Maratha War happened in 1817 to 1819, which is also known as the Pindari War. Pindari War. Because Pindaris, the marauders, on that it was also started. Now this ended with splitting of the confederacies separately, but more importantly, abolishment of Peshwaship. 1817 also considered in the revolts. Paika rebellion happened under the leadership of Bakshi Vidyadhar in Odisha. 1820, Thomas Munro implemented Ryotwadi settlement. Thomas Munro is the governor of Madras. Now, why I have not read Alexander Reed? Alexander Reed in 1790s experimented with this system in particular areas and basically Ryotwadi system is considered to be implemented by Alexander Reed and Thomas Munro, not at the same time, but it's basically their joint contribution. Okay. 1822 Mehalwari system by Holt Mackenzie is introduced, later on revised by William Bentinck. Okay. Lord Amherst became Governor General of Bengal in 1823 to 1828. So first Anglo-Burmese War also happens 1824 to 26, and this ends with the Treaty of Yandabo with Burma in 1826. Pagalpanti movement 1825 to 1833, the revolts which we talk about before 1857. 1828 to 35, very important period. Lord William Bentinck was the last Governor General of Bengal and first Governor General of India. Okay. Brahmo Samaj founded by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, as I discussed earlier, and his efforts led to the abolition of sati. So 1831, William Bentinck took control of Mysore. Now this is very important. 1831 to 1881, Mysore was not a princely state. William Bentinck took control of Mysore on the grounds of misgovernance. But in 1881, under Lord Ripon, it was returned back to Vodayars and became a princely state. Okay. 1833, Charter Act abolishes the trade monopoly of English, English East India Company, which now clearly becomes a absolutely administrative body. Okay. 1833 Khasi rebellion under Uttarat Singh. 1835 Lord, now very, very important. This year, as you know, Prime Ministers also emphasized a lot. There was a debate going on between Anglicists and Orientalists. Anglicists wanted English education to be introduced in India as a main medium of instruction, whereas Orientalists believed that the vernacular should be used. Moreover, the system which is already there should be further studied by us rather than them, our systems by them. So this debate was settled by Lord Macaulay, who himself was an Anglicist. He was given a charge to decide how do we go about it, and he came out with his minutes on education, which clearly favored in favor of Anglicist and English education. 1835, Charles Metcalfe liberated Indian press, is known as liberator of Indian press. He freed the press of restrictions which was existing at that time. So 1836 to 1842, Lord Auckland was the Governor General of India. And this is also period when first Afghan war, often known as the misadventure, particularly this period, which resulted in. So 1838 to 1842, again a tripartite agreement happens between the English, Shah Shuja and Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So Maharaja Ranjit Singh dies in 1839, and even though Shah Shuja was installed as the king in Afghanistan, but he was killed, and later on English were thrown out of Afghanistan, killed in mass, and it was known as Afghan misadventure. 1839, Debendranath Tagore, he founded Tattva Bodhini Sabha. He was also the founding member, was a part of, not founding member, but a part of Brahmo Samaj. 1842 to 1844, Lord Ellenborough became the Governor General of India. Okay, Lord Ellenborough became the Governor General of India, and Ellenborough conquests Sindh because of his expansionary policy, particularly looking at northwest frontier, given the threat arising from Russia. 1843, slavery in India was abolished. 1844 to 1848, Henry Harding becomes the Governor General of India. First Anglo-Sikh War happens now after 1839 when Maharaja Ranjit Singh dies. There's instability in the empire. There's no, so some become rebellious. There's infighting, and English sees it as an opportunity. At the same side, they do not want to see unstable northwest. So first Anglo-Sikh War happens where the uh, the area is not occupied, but a resident is sent to Lahore. But still, the infighting continues. So this Treaty of Lahore and Bhairowal was signed between British and Sikhs after the first Anglo-Sikh War. 1848 to 1856, Lord Dalhousie became the Governor General of India, and a lot of changes happened during this period. Well, number one being the uh, being Second Anglo-Sikh War and annexation of Punjab happening. This resulted in annexation of Punjab directly under the British. 1848, Student Literary and Scientific Society was formed to develop an interest in literary and scientific knowledge. Bethune School was founded in Calcutta. A lot of people are associated with them, including Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. 1851, Naroji Furdonji, Dadabhai Naroji, and SS Bengali started Rehnumai Mazad Dayasan Sabha Religious Reform Association, particularly focusing on the religious reform of Parsi religion. Rast Goftar is the journal often associated with it, or the newspaper. Second Anglo-Burmese War happened 1852 to 53. Now, Charter Act of 1853 brings in the element of uh, legislative and executive separate. Okay, it's important. 1854, now Wood's Educational Dispatch lays out entire, so it's a Magna Carta of how education developed in India till today. It lays out how education would be approached as a subject by English, as a subject, not as a subject, but as a subject of the state. Santhal's revolt happened under Sidhu Manji and Kanhu in 1855, eventually resulting in separate Santhal Parganas. 1856, Awadh was annexed on the pretext of misgovernance. Wajid Ali Shah was sent to Calcutta under house arrest, separately in exile. And later on, you would know that Begum Hazrat Mahal and how she contributed in the revolt of 1857. Hindu Widow Remarriage Act, on the efforts of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, remarriage was legalized. Revolt of 1857, often known as India's first war of independence, happened between 1857 to 58. How, revolt spread across, particularly in the areas of Ganga, Yamuna, Doab region, particularly Kanpur, Lucknow, Bareilly, Delhi, Bihar, Faizabad, became the important centers of revolt. Jhansi, okay, and eventually it was suppressed in 1858 by British. And after the suppression, two important things came up. Number one is the Government of India Act of 1858 in October of 1858, and then in November, Queen came out with a proclamation that we would not now uh, indulge in the personal religious affairs. We won't take more territories now. The assurances were given. Now, who gave this assurances? Which queen? It was Queen Victoria. 1861 Indian Council Act of 1861. Now, whenever you hear this Council Act, remember it is about the Legislative Council and the Executive Council primarily. on which it is based on. So usually you'll see the expansion of legislative council, particularly the uh, non-official members, increase over the period of time. So there are 1861, 1892, 1909. 1861 also Indian Civil Service Act of 1861 was introduced, opening up Indian civil service for Indians. John Lawrence became the Governor General of India from 1864 to 1869. So Duar War with Bhutan happens 1864, right? Duar War, and it ends with the Treaty of Sinchula with Bhutan. Now, early political movement, East India Association is established by Dadabhai Nauroji in London, and this is a very, very important organization influencing the opinion in London, Indian opinion in London. 1867, Pratna Samaj was founded by Dr. Atmaran Pandurang in 1867 in Mumbai. M.G. Ranade, R. G. Bhandarkar, and N.G. Chandavarkar were prominent members of Pratna Samaj, another very, very important organization. Deobandi movement was founded by Muhammad Qasim Nonatavi, so it was a revivalist movement. Rashid Ahmad Gangohi, now today based in Deoband, right? In 1870, what we see is Female Infanticide Prevention Act came up. So female infanticide until then was very rampant, even after that, but then an act was brought in to make it criminal offense. 1870, Indian Reform Association was formed by Keshav Chandra Sen. Okay, so 1870 also is Purna Sarvajanik Sabha. So Sarvajanik Sabha now is a early political organization in Maharashtra by M.G. Ranade, G.V. Joshi and S.H. Chiplunkar. 1872 Native Marriage Act is passed providing secular marriage without religious rights. So until then there was not such any kind of such act like in modern times you have special marriage act. On those lines Native Marriage Act came up. Okay. 1875. Now this is very important timeline. Why? Because 150 years have happened. Okay. So Swami Dayanand Saraswati founded Arya Samaj in Bombay. So Swami Dayanand Saraswati founded Arya Samaj. So you back to the Vedas, remember? Back to the Vedas. 1875, Theosophical Society was also founded in New York. And by Madam H.P. Blavatsky and H.S. Olcott. Now later on, 1879, they shifted to India, creating Adyar Madras as their base. 1876 to 1880, Second Afghan War happened, and this time English won. 1876 is also a period when Indian Association is established, another political organization. Surendranath Banerjee and Anand Mohan Bose, they established Indian Association. 1877, Delhi Darbar of Queen Victoria happens. And she is proclaimed, even though she does not come, a grand darbar is conducted, and she is claimed as Empress of India. 1879 Treaty of Gandamak with Afghanistan happens after the Second Anglo-Afghan War. Now you also see a first instance of rise of revolutionary ideas at this time. Vasudev Balwant Phadke, a clerk in the commissariat department, had gathered. Now this is overlap. Ramoshi peasant revolt at the same time a revolutionary kind of movement. So he gathered a band of Ramoshi peasants, started armed uprising in Maharashtra. Okay, armed uprising in Maharashtra. 1881, Lord Ripon. Now, before that, I've not covered here, but do read about Lytton, Lord Lytton. Very infamous Arms Act, 1878. Okay, Arms Act, very, very infamous. So, this now a lot of things which Lytton was very infamous. Ripon, on the other hand, was a famous governor general because of his more liberal ideology. So he repealed this Arms Act. Another act which was brought by Vernacular Press Act, restricting vernacular press. That was also repealed by Ripon. Ripon is also known as The He restored Mysore kingdom also to Wodeyar. Plus, he brought an Ilbert Bill, but later on it was the modified version of it came, and he's known as the father of local government in India. 1882, under Ripon, a Hunter Commission on Education was appointed, which basically decided that privatization, private education should also be promoted, which eventually was. Lord Dufferin is the viceroy in 1884 to 1888. Under him, the major thing which happened was the formation of Indian National Congress in 1885. 1884, Madras Mahajan Sabha is also formed, an early political organization. 1884 in Madras. 1885, another early political organization, Bombay Presidency Association by Firoz Shah Mehta, K.T. Telang, and Badruddin Tyabji in Bombay. But under one umbrella, all these political organizations and people came, established, taken an initiative by A.O. Hume. Indian National Congress is formed in 1885. The first session being at Bombay. W.C. Banerjee, the first president. So 1885 is also a period of Third Anglo-Burmese War. 1892, Indian Council Act, second in the series of the Council Acts, came up, increasing the number of non-official members, particularly increasing, and some small powers given. 1893, Gandhiji also reached Durban Natal primarily to represent a case of his client, for which he stayed for a year, but then later on realized that there's a section of Indian society who's suffering there and stayed back to fight for their cause. And he stayed it until 1914. 1897, brothers now Damodar and Balkrishna Hari Chapekar. Chapekar brothers, another of the revolutionary activity, assassinated two British officials. At that time, what was happening was the plague was happening in Maharashtra, particularly Pune and Nashik region, and given the way British were handling it, many people were not happy. So Chapekar brothers assassinated two British officials, W.C. Rand and Lieutenant Ayers, who were the plague commissioner and the assistant commissioner. Lord Curzon became the viceroy in May 1899. Until 1905, he remained as the viceroy of India. A lot of things happened under him, including the partition of Bengal. 1899 to 1900, Munda revolt led by Birsa Munda happened, which is also known as the Ulgulan. 1902, under Curzon, what happened? Indian Universities Commission, on the recommendation, Indian Universities Commission is set up, comes out with the Indian Universities Act in 1904, which says that the privatization has actually reduced the quality of education. At the same time, centralizes a lot of power with the government in recommending, uh, you know, bringing in any changes. So centralization of power also happens during this time. 1902, now rise of revolutionary activity. Now in Bengal, Anushilan Samiti was secret revolutionary organization established in Calcutta in 1902. Also 1902, British bestowed Mahatma Gandhi with Kaisar-e-Hind for his work with the Ambulance Corps in Boer War, which was happening in South Africa. 1903, Gandhiji started a weekly journal known as Indian Opinion in South Africa. In 1904, British invasion of Tibet, also known as Young Husbands invasion, happened. 1904, Mahatma Gandhi founded Phoenix Settlement in Durban for community living. So 1904, Abhinav Bharat, Young India Society, was founded by V.D. Savarkar and his brother Ganesh Savarkar. And in fact, in 1899, they had Mitra Mela. They were young, but now this organized in a more formal organization of Abhinav Bharat. He was hugely inspired by Mazzini's Young Italy. That is why you see Young India or Abhinav Bharat as a name. 1905, partition of Bengal happens under Curzon, and this leads to a new phase of movement under leadership of extremists within Congress. So the moderate phase ends here. You see the rise of start of Swadeshi movement. Also, the revolutionary movement continued. Shyamji Krishna Verma, he founded India Home Rule Society, India House in London, and Indian Sociologist Journal in London. Okay. And at the same time, Madam Bikaji Kama, S.R. Rana, and Muncher Shah Burorji Godrej established Paris Indian Society, another one inspiring revolutionaries. Swadeshi movement started in 1905. 1905 session, Gopal Krishna Gokhale condemned the partition and the reactionary regime of Curzon. Now, further things continued with the revolutionary movement. Pulin Bihari Das started Anushilan Samiti in Dhaka also. Yugantar Patrika was launched in March of 1906 by Barindra Kumar Ghosh, Abhinash Bhattacharya, and Bhupendranath Dutt. Muslim League is formed in 1906 under the leadership of Aga Khan, particularly inspired by Lord Minto. 1906 also Calcutta session, now headed by Dadabhai Nauroji, passed four important resolutions for Swadeshi movement, which was one on Swadeshi, one on boycott, one on national education, one on Swaraj. Now another session happened, and the reiteration of these four resolutions were demanded by extremists, but moderates didn't want that. This led to Surat split in the Surat session of Congress between extremists and moderates. Okay. There are then 1908, another of a revolutionary movement. Khudiram Bose and Prafulla Chakki threw bomb at carriage, which they believed was occupied by Judge Kingsford. He was an unpopular judge in Muzaffarpur, but unfortunately, two ladies died. Khudiram Bose Prafulla Chakki committed suicide. Khudiram Bose was hanged at the age of just 50. 1909, Indian third in the series of Indian Council Act, especially known for its separate electorates. Separate electorates for Muslims. 1909, Madan Lal Dhingra assassinated Sir Curzon in London, and he was later sentenced to death in London, where he was hanged. His speech is often referred to as what he spoke in the quote is often very moving and inspiring. Must read. 1909, Anand Lakshman Kanhere is a 17-year-old boy belonging from Maharashtra. He killed the district magistrate of Nashik, A.M.T. Jackson. Now, he was killed with a Browning pistol, which was imported from London, considered to be sent by Savarkar, V.D. Savarkar. And this case became Nashik conspiracy case. Nashik conspiracy case. And in this case only, V.D. Savarkar was arrested in London, brought to India, given 2 life sentences in Kalapani. Later on, after 12-13 years, sent to Ratnagiri jail, kept in Ratnagiri as district prisoner sort of a thing, confined to the borders of the district, and thereafter eventually made free in later 30s. Now G.D. Kumar opened a hostel in Vancouver called Swadesh Sevak Home on the lines of India House in London. India House by what we've read earlier, Shyamji Krishna Verma opened. Now G.D. Kumar opened similar hostel in Vancouver. 1911, Delhi Darbar of King George V happens. King George V came along with his wife, and that is where they were also given, coronation happened. 1911, revocation of partition of Bengal happened. Okay. So now in 1912, an unsuccessful attempt was made under now this is very important, often known as Delhi conspiracy case. Rash Bihari Bose and Sachindra Nath Sachin Sanyal tried to kill Viceroy Lord Hardinge, but fortunately he survived. And later on, Rash Bihari Bose escaped, went to Japan, and 1943 handed over the command of INA to Subhash Chandra Bose. He was a revolutionary for decades. 1913, Indian revolutionaries who were living in United States of America and Canada, they formed Ghadar Party. Ghadar Party became a revolutionary party, particularly wanted to overthrow English government in India, um, especially during taking advantage of World War One. 1914 to 1918, First World War started. And 1914, a Komagata Maru incident happened where a ship from Singapore, taking primarily Punjabis to Vancouver, when it reached Vancouver, it was not allowed to, the people were not allowed to disembark. As it is said that it was English authorities who directed the Canadian authorities not to allow them to disembark. Eventually, after 2 months, it came back to Calcutta and Bajbaj, where the occupants were told to take a train to Punjab, but many people protested and led to a lot of killings. 1915, Madan Mohan Malviya, he founded All India Hindu Mahasabha, basically umbrella organization of all the regional Hindu Mahasabhas or Sabhas. Lucknow Pact 1916 is a very, very important where a Lucknow session of Congress happened, where a pact between Indian National Congress and Muslim League happened for joint representation for British. At the same time, in front of British, at the same time, extremists were readmitted to Congress. 1916 to 1918, Indian Home Rule League Indian Home Rule movement started on the lines of Irish Home Rule movement under two different leaders for their separate Home Rule leagues, one under Annie Besant and second under Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Montego Declaration came in 1970. Secretary of State said that the ultimate objective of British in India is to have responsible government with self-governing institutions. So this became a very important declaration on which future national movement was based on. So Mahatma Gandhi he came back to India in 1915 and in 1917 he led Champaran Satyagraha for the rights of indigo planters in Champaran. 1917 Sadler Commission is appointed for reforms in education. 1918 Ahmedabad mill strike was the first hunger strike taken by Mahatma Gandhi and which resulted in influencing the decision to increase the salary for workers of Ahmedabad mill. 1918 Kheda Satyagraha in Gujarat is a very, very important uh, event again where civil disobedience you see happens. But civil disobedience as a movement is separate. Okay. The Government of India Act of 1919, very, very important, is that it brings Dyaki. Dyaki Act. Now, if you remember Montego's declaration, self-governing institutions and responsible government, how responsible government came? Only in a very small way in form of Dyaki. That too at provinces. So where there were reserved subjects for the governor and his council, but transferred subjects primarily for the ministers. But no Dyaki or nothing like autonomy in center. Okay. 1919 Act is very, very important. Also provides separate electorates to other communities as well. 1919, after World War One, Rowlett Committee was set up to and was set up, and it recommended that act should be brought in to ensure any kind of disturbances in Punjab, Bengal could be looked into. So Rowlett Act was introduced, and Rowlett Satyagraha was happened in April, but an event in Amritsar happened, which is known as Jallianwala Bagh massacre, resulting in hundreds of killings by General Dyer, at that time, Dyer, and this led to the rise of intensity of national movement in India. 1920, M.N. Roy formed the Communist Party of India outside India. It's not the official. It was actually Kanpur, where officially Communist Party of India was formed in 1925. 1920, 31st July, Lokmanya Tilak passes away, and 1st August, Khilafat and non-cooperation movement starts. So it's like a passing of baton from one national leader to the other. All India Swarajya Fund is established, for the movement, particularly also, taking inspiration and paying homage to Lokmanya Tilak. So, non-cooperation movement ended with an incident in Chauri Chaura in Gorakhpur district of United Provinces, which resulted in violence where Mahatma Gandhi after that took back non-cooperation movement. 1922 to 24 Rampa Rebellion happens. Alluri Sitaram Raju leads this in the tribal belt of modern day Andhra Pradesh and eventually ends with the execution of Alluri Sitaram Raju. 1923 Swaraj Party was formed. Now these are the pro-changers led by C.R. Das, Chittaranjan Das, and Motilal Nehru, who believed that after the end of non-cooperation movement, there should not be political inactivity, but rather we should participate in elections. Swaraj Party eventually participated in elections as within Congress. 1924 Belgaum session happens where uh, program constructive work was also talked about, but also Swaraj Party was told to fight elections within Congress fold. It is the only session where Mahatma Gandhi has presided over Congress. Also, 1924, Hindustan Republican Association is formed. Very, very important organization which is important for revolutionary activities. Kakori train conspiracy, etc., is led by HRA only. It was later on redesignated. We'll talk about that. So Kakori train robbery is conducted by HRA. Communist Party, as I discussed earlier, was formed officially in India in Kanpur in 1925. 1926, Bhagat Singh and his revolutionary companions, they founded Naujawan Bharat Sabha in March of 1926 in Lahore. 1927, Simon Commission was appointed and Simon Commission came to India. It was an all-white commission. All-white commission. And when it came, there was protest all across India. So it was basically a commission appointed to look into any reforms to be made. Okay. Butler Committee was also appointed in 1927 to look at the relation between the princely states and the British. So 1927, on 17 December 1927, Bhagat Singh, Azad and Rajguru mistakenly targeted and killed ASP John Saunders while their actual aim was Superintendent of Police James Scott. Why? Because in the protests for Simon Go Back protests, Lala Lajpat Rai was wounded. Eventually, he died. So, to take the revenge, it was decided that we will kill SP James Scott, but ASP John Saunders was killed. So, this case came to be known as Lahore conspiracy case. 1927, at the age of 13, Rani Gandanliu, along with her cousin Hypo Jadonang, joined Heraka movement. This movement was to revive Naga tribal religion and establish self-rule of the Nagas, ending British rule. 1928, now HRA is redesignated as HSRA. Okay, so Firosha Kotla ruins September 9 and 10, under the leadership of Chandrasekhar Azad. Socialism is accepted as the objective official goal of HRA and it was redesignated as Hindustan Socialist Republican Association or Army. Now, so there is this person, Secretary of State Birkenhead. He says that, Indians cannot agree on a common constitution. And he gives a challenge that if you can agree on a constitution, we will give you that. So all party conference happens. Okay, all party conference happens. And now this leads to a common report known as the Nehru report. But then there is a disagreement eventually by Muslim League, where Muhammad Ali Jinnah asked some 3 amendments or changes, which was not agreed to by Motilal Nehru. And eventually Jinnah gave his 14 points that until unless these 14 points are agreed to, we will not be satisfied with this Nehru report. Now, the primary objective of this Nehru report under the leadership of Motilal Nehru is that dominion status should be provided to India. But people like Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose do not agree with that. They said that idea, so it should be complete independence, not dominion status. So a 1 year period eventually was decided to be given to British to agree to dominion status. Otherwise, in the next Congress session in 29, the objective would change to complete independence. And that is what happened. 1929, when English didn't agree to dominion status, it was the objective of Congress became Purna Swaraj, which was adopted in the Lahore session. And 26th January of 1930 was the first Swarajya Day, which was celebrated. 1929, also Bhagat Singh and Bhutto Keshwar Dutt, they threw a bomb in the Central Legislative Assembly. And basically, against the passing of the discussion on particular laws was being, a bill were being discussed. And they particularly targeted the empty seats so that the deaf could hear. And they were arrested eventually. It was found that Bhagat Singh, Rajguru were the ones who were uh, were associated with the Lahore conspiracy case. Okay. During this period, the Yugantar and Anushilan groups underwent reorganization also. And a new organization came up in Bengal, particularly known as Chittagong Revolt Group, led by Surya Sen. So, Chittagong Armory raid happened under him. Now, so civil disobedience movement was started through Dandi March, Salt Satyagraha. Okay. Gandhiji said, my 11 demands are there. That has to be agreed to. Otherwise, this will go on. So civil disobedience grew, means continued from 30 to 33, where with a small period of suspension. I'll talk about why. So in the first roundtable conference, the Congress didn't participate. So it was decided that it won't be successful, the roundtable conferences, if Congress does not participate. So there was a pact known as Delhi Pact or Gandhi Irwin Pact, where Gandhi was released from jail and met Lord Irwin in the newly opened Viceroy House, known today as Rashtrapati Bhavan. So there they agreed to a pact on basis of which Congress would participate in the roundtable, second roundtable conference. And this led to the suspension of civil disobedience movement for a period. So 1931 Karachi session, the Gandhi Irwin Pact or Delhi Pact was, resolution was passed in favor of it. Also, two fundamental rights and national economic program were also, resolutions on these were also passed. Okay, Vallabhbhai Patel was the presiding this Congress session. Now, Congress participated in second roundtable conference, and only the sole member of Congress was Mahatma Gandhi. Now, the outcome of it was second roundtable conference was Ramsay MacDonald announced communal award, and this showed the dual face of primarily British, and Mahatma Gandhi was very unhappy with it because communal award said that there will be separate electorates for depressed classes also. So Gandhi thought that this would divide Hindu society further. So when he came back, he protested. He was again arrested because civil disobedience was resumed. He was in Yerawada jail, and there he went on to fast unto death. Eventually, under the pressure of his fast unto death, there was a Pune Pact between Dr. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi, where in place of separate electorates, joint electorates were introduced, doubling the number of seats, reserved seats. Also, 1932, Harijan Sevak Sangh All India Anti-Untouchability League was established on 30th September 1932 by Mahatma Gandhi. 1934, Congress Socialist Party was formed within Congress by Acharya Narendra Dev, Jayaprakash Narayan, Ram Manohar Lohia. Now, very, very important, based on Simon Commission reports and recommendations, Lothian Committee report, white paper, roundtable conferences, Government of India Act of 1935 was passed. Now, Dyaki came into center, and Dyaki at provinces were replaced by provincial autonomy. Okay. So 1936 Lucknow session of Congress, All India Kisan Sabha was established. Swami Sayajanand Saraswati was elected as the first president of All India Kisan Sabha. 1936 Faizpur session, it was first Congress session in rural area. And 1937 provincial election happened and Congress did exceedingly well where they formed government immediately. Okay. 1938 51st session of Congress was held at Haripura village in Surat district and presided over by Subhash Chandra Bose. 1939 Subhash Chandra Bose formed Forward Bloc as a new party within the Congress after resigning as president of Congress. There were differences the way he was thinking. He resigned from the president of Congress, formed Forward Bloc initially within Congress. 1939 to 1945 was the start of Second World War, and without asking any of the Indian leaders, India was made part of this war. Congress was not happy, so they resigned in 1939. And this Muslim League celebrates this day of resignation of Congress ministries as Deliverance Day. Okay. 1940, Lord Linlithgow came out with the August offer saying that we will give dominion status at the end of the war and some more concessions, but so that Congress could support, or the parties could support, the British in World War II. But parties rejected August offer. Now, Muslim League came out with Pakistan resolution in Lahore saying that we want a separate state known as Pakistan. In 1940, they came out with it. Now, August offer, since it was not agreed, Mahatma Gandhi thought it's not a time of mass movement. So we'll start with individual satyagraha. So Acharya Vinoba Bhave, then Jawaharlal Nehru, then Brahmadatta, they started with individual satyagraha. Another mission was sent to India to persuade Indian political parties to come to support British in the war effort, at the same time agreeing to some sort of temporary agreement. But Cripps' mission was also not agreed to. Stafford Cripps, whatever he proposed, was not agreed to. And immediately in protest, Congress started Quit India movement with Agast Kranti, 8th August 1942, at Golia Tank Ground. The resolution for Quit India was passed. So three phases of movements are there in Quit India. At the same time, in Singapore, the prisoners of war formed under the leadership of Mohan Singh, Indian National Army or Azad Hind Fauj in February of 1942. So in 1943, when Subhash Chandra Bose now reaches through Germany to Japan, eventually to Singapore, was brought to Singapore by means of German and Japanese submarines and took charge of Indian National Army. Now, efforts were being made so that partition does not take place and there is an agreement between Muslim League and Congress. CR formula or Rajaji formula was proposed, which was not agreed to by Congress party. Okay. Then another agreement was discussed, Desai Liaquat Pact, but again, it was not agreed to, and eventually even Liaquat Ali Khan said that, he's not the one, means he stepped back from it. Now, Lord Wavell came out with his plan, and Shimla, it was discussed also, but also it could not break the, bring anyone to consensus. So 1945-46, the prisoners of war who participated as Azad Hind Fauj, Indian National Army, their trials started happening in Red Fort. And there was protests across India, including the Royal Indian Navy. They were not happy with it. Means, I'll talk about what happened. So Clement Attlee now, who was the member of Labour Party, became the UK Prime Minister. And after this war, UK, even though won this war, but it came out not as a major power, but as a battered power. So 1946 elections, Muslim League won in Muslim dominated areas and Congress won in primarily Hindu dominated areas. And a cabinet mission plan was with the members of cabinet, UK cabinet came with the cabinet mission plan. It was eventually agreed to both the parties. But again, the members of the Constituent Assembly was eventually elected. And there were certain disagreements as well. So election to Constituent Assembly took place. After the failure of cabinet mission in certain areas, Jinnah called for direct action day. He's so that I want so in 16th August 1946 direct action day for the demand of Pakistan. Huge killings took place in Calcutta and Bengal. 1946 interim government is formed. And now on February 20, 1947, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee says that English would withdraw from India by 30th June 1948, and he replaces Lord Wavell with Lord Mountbatten so that he could come for the transition. And 3rd June 1947, Mountbatten came out with his Mountbatten plan. He proposed that India, two dominions would be created, India and Pakistan. This was done by making concessions to both Congress and the League. Radcliffe was appointed for Boundary Commission to demarcate the boundary between India and Pakistan. And with the passing of Indian Independence Act, Parliament in the British Parliament, royal assent to the partition was given on 18 July 1947. And with this, the active recall from 1498 to 1947 is done. I hope this was informative, and with the matter of limited time, you could recall the entire modern history. I assure you this timeline will be very helpful for many questions directly. So in just 1.5 hours max, we were able to basically cover entire modern history in on a same timeline. Separate topics, but on the same timeline. This is a very, very effective way to cover modern Indian history and very quickly revise it. I hope you liked it. So please subscribe the channel, like the video if you really liked it, and please comment what you particularly liked about this video. Thank you so much for watching this.